Hello there, this is Dimitris Christou, and I'm back with yet another video tutorial. And this time around we'll be using the Blender dynamics, the Blender physics, to create something nice. And it will actually be pretty easy to build our clip. So follow along. I'll begin by deleting the default cube. I'll hit the X key while the cube is selected to delete it. And I'll hit Shift A and add a text. Okay. I'll hit the R key to rotate and X and then 90 on my keyboard to rotate the text for 90 degrees on the X axis and then hit enter to confirm. I'll move over to the text options. I'm clicking this little F icon here, and what I'll do is first of all center my text, click center for the alignment, and what I'll also do is hit the tab key while the cursor is over the 3D view to change from object to edit mode. And when we do that for a text object, we can hit the backspace to delete the text and type in anything that we want to appear for our text. And I'm typing in love, okay, and hitting the tab key again to switch from edit to object mode. We have our text here put, and what I'll do now is extrude the text so that our text now has volume. And what we'll also do is change the offset. I want to make my text here to be thicker than the original shown text, and I'll change the offset to 0.030. Okay. Now I want to apply a particle system to this object, to the text, but as you can see I can do it, and that's because the text object is not a mesh object and the particle system needs a mesh object in order to operate. So I want to change the text into a mesh object, and I'll do that by moving over here and clicking object and selecting convert to. You can also hit Alt C to make the convert to menu appear, and I'll select mesh from curve meta surf text. Okay. Now if I hit the tab key while the cursor is over the 3D view to change from object to edit mode, you can see that the text is now a mesh object. Okay. Now this is a habit of mine. I'll hit the A key to select all and move down here at the tools panel, and I'll click remove doubles to remove any double vertices or faces from the mesh object. Okay, hitting the tab key again, and we have our mesh ready. We can apply a particle system to this one. I'll hit the Z key to grab it and Z to move it on the Z axis, and I'll move this one up. So the object that will accept the particle system is ready. Time to build the particles. I'll click right here to move over to the second layer, and let's build the particles. I'll hit Shift A and add mesh cube. We have our cube here appearing. I'll move over to the modifiers panel, and let's also change the name of the cube. Double click here, and I'll change this one to particle _1, and I'll add a modifier. I have clicked this little blue key here. Click add modifier, and I'll add a bevel modifier. I want a slight bevel for the cube's edges, and I'll change the value here to 0.02, so we're having a smaller width and a smaller bevel appearing for our object. And what I can do now is hit apply to apply the bevel modifier to the cube. Okay. What I'll also do is add a material for my cube here. I'm moving over to the material panel, click this little sphere icon and click new, and I'll call the first material for the first particle, for the first cube, 1. Okay. I'll change the diffuse color. Let's make this one a bright, pinkish color. Since we're talking about love, I think it'll be appropriate. Okay. And I'll also bring the specular density down to 0.05, and I think this is good. Alright. Now I'll hit Shift D for a duplicate of this cube, and hit X to move the duplicate on the X axis and move it over to the side. Alright. So we have our second cube here. We can change the name for this one as well. Let's call this one particle underscore 2. Alright. And I'll also click this little 2 icon here because I want a unique material for this object. As you can see now, the one material has 2 users, and these 2 users are our 2 cubes here. So clicking this 2 for a unique material, and I'll call this one 2. For the 2 material, I'll change the diffuse color from the original color to a nice white color. Okay, I think we're good with our particles here. What I'm going to do is hold down the Shift key and select them both and hit Ctrl G to add them to a group. You can see at the bottom left corner here we have created a new group, and the name of the group is group. Feel free to change it. Let's change it to particles. Okay, and what we'll do now is move over to the first layer. Okay, and select the love text. Let's take a closer look, and we're going to add a particle system to it. So clicking on the particle system icon and hitting plus for a new particle system. Okay, for our love objects here, we don't want the text to make the particles appear. We don't want it to have a spray of particles or anything, so I'm going to change it from emitter to here. We want some permanent particles appearing in the text. So we have the here appearing, but we don't want to use here. I'm going to click down here, group. We want to use a group, and I'm going to click here to select the particles group. So as you can see, we have the particles appearing on our text object, which is now a mesh object. And what I want for my particle system here is click advanced to modify my particle system a bit more. We have the emit from option here, and we are currently emitting our particles from the faces of the object. We don't want that. We want the particles to be a part of the volume. We want the particles to be in the object. And what we also want is make our particles, as you can see here, we definitely have to make them smaller. So let's change the size. It is set by default to 0.05. Let's set it to 0.01. Okay. Or perhaps even smaller. Let's set it to 0.005. Okay. Feel free to fiddle with the settings here. And I think we're good at about there. And one more thing I'll do for my particle system is change the number. Let's set it up from 1000 to 2000. Okay, I'll hit the Z key on my keyboard while the cursor is over the 3D view to take a look through the wireframe mode, and I can clearly see the particles in my object. Okay. Now, as you can see, we're having more particles in the O object, while we have less particles for the V, E, and L objects. And that happens because the O object, the O mesh here, has a more dense mesh, and that's why Blender adds more particles to the O letter. I'll hit the Tab key, and the text mesh here is selected, and I'll hold down the Shift key and select, or perhaps don't hold down the Shift key, click this little vertex here for the L, the vertex for the V, and the vertex for the E, and hit Ctrl L to select linked. Okay. Now I'll hit W for the specials menu and click subdivide. Let's subdivide them a couple of times. Okay. And hit the Tab key to switch from edit to object mode, and as you can see now, we're having pretty much more particles here distributed over the L and the V and the E letters. Okay, another thing we can do for this particle system here is to click random, and we can also add some sort of rotation here. Yep, we have the random variation, excuse me. And we can do all sorts of stuff like adding some randomness to the size, but let's keep the random size to 0 because we want to apply physics to the particle cubes. Alright, now the particle system is ready and we have the text here selected, and what we'll do is move over to Object, and let's find this one. We will move over to Apply and select Make Duplicates Real. And what that does is that it makes the duplicates that the particle system use, it turns them into actual real objects. Okay, now we don't need the text anymore. We can delete it, but let's keep it. I'll move it over to the third layer. Okay. Now you can see the particle system is actual objects, and you can see it forming the love word. Okay, let's keep for the objects here something to interact. I'll hit Shift A, I'll keep it simple, and add mesh a plane. Now I'll hit the Tab key to switch from object to edit mode, and it's a habit of mine. I'm usually editing the objects in edit mode and not in object mode, because I want the actual size of the object to stay to 1. And I'll hit the S key to scale up my plane. Let's scale it up at about 6 times or perhaps 7 times. Okay. And I'll hit W for the specials menu and select Subdivide, and let's add some more faces for our plane, for our ground here. Okay, I'm setting the number of cuts to 10, and now I'll hit the Tab key to switch from edit to object mode. Now I'll hit the Z key to move back to the shaded preview mode, and you can see our world here. Okay. Now it's time to add some physics, some dynamics to our cubes, and I'm going to hit the A key to deselect all and hit B, click and drag, hit Shift S to bring the cursor back to the center, and then hit B, click and drag to select all the cubes that form the love world. What I'll also do is move closer and right click one of them to have a selected object, and that's how Blender works. We want to have an object selected, and I'll move over to the left and we have the rigid body tools, and now that we have our objects here selected, I'll click Add Active to make all my cubes here active objects. Okay. As you can see, we're having here the settings, and I've moved over to the physics panel. We have the settings for the rigid body. Now we have the set our cubes to be active objects for the rigid body. And what we'll do is select the floor, right click to select the floor, and we're going to click Add Passive for our floor, because we want our floor to stay still and interact with the cubes. Okay, now let's hit play to see how it all looks. And we have to wait a bit because we're having a bit of big old calculations happening here. And let's wait a bit more. We're at frame 3, 4. And perhaps I'll have to pause again. Okay. I'm hitting the play key, and you can see our cubes falling, and our world here is gone. Okay. Now I want to place the camera. Let's take a good look at our text and the scene, and I'll hit Ctrl Alt 0 to roughly place the camera at the place I was previously looking at. Right mouse button click to select the camera and move over to the camera options, and let's change the focal length, the focal from 35 to 30. Okay, and let's move back to C, and I think we have our text here framed nicely. Let's modify the camera position and rotation a bit more. Let's bring it up on the x-axis. I want my camera to look up a bit, and I'll bring it down on the z-axis, and I'll also set the location here to 0. Let's set the z rotation to 0.5. okay, and let's set the y to -4. Let's take our camera a bit back, and let's see now how it looks. Okay, I'll bring the Y value here a bit more down and bring the rotation, let's set it to 87. Okay, let's take a look again. Alright. And adjusting the camera once more. Okay, I think we're good at about there. Now what I'll do for my text and scene here is add some environment lighting. I'll keep it to white and I'll also increase the sampling. Okay, and let's try to render an image to take a look. And this is how the demolished text looks. This is a pretty brief, a pretty quick animation. I've only kept at about 75 frames of it. You won't be needing any more than that. Let's see if it looks clear at the first frame. Okay, it looks pretty clear. Another thing you can do is change the blender render to cycles render. Okay, I'm also changing the device from CPU to GPU compute because I want my graphics card to work for the cycles render. And let's move over to the particles. Okay, we have this particle here. I right mouse button clicking to select it. I'll move over to the materials and I'll click use nodes to use the material for the cycles render. And I'll change this one from diffuse BSDF to let's set it to emission, and select this one and click use nodes and leave this one as a diffuse BSDF. And let's try to render another one. Let's first of all change the sampling. Let's change the render, let's set it to 200. Okay, and let's render an image to see. And as you can see, what I'm doing here is using the one particle to be the light and the other particle to be just a normal diffuse object. Okay, this one also looks pretty interesting. So as I'm always saying, feel free to experiment. And I'm going to save this one. File, save as, and let's save this as low fall. And as I always say, feel free to experiment and try your own settings, your own text, your own objects, your own particles. And of course, you don't have to limit your particle system to follow text. You can also follow, make it follow objects and then make it fall to the ground. You can, for example, build a car out of cubes and let it fall and make it pieces. So this is it. This is Dimitris Christou. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned a trick or two.